that's one of the things that I think is the most toxic right now, is that everyone feels like they have to respond to that, or that there's pressure to do this. And like, well, if you didn't take a stand on whatever, like that means you accept it. No, I'm just not smart enough to know all sides of it. And I got to focus on what I'm focused on.
Let's impact some men today. I think we're going to do a great job.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Modern Man Podcast, where we connect men in pursuit of their potential. Join us as we embrace discomfort, cultivate community, and put wind in each other's sails. Now, if you're ready to take your personal and professional growth to the next level, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. And also, don't forget to check out the Noble Knights Mastermind Group, where you can find the support, accountability, and mentorship you need to achieve your goals. Now, join us and become a part of a community of like-minded men on a mission to improve themselves and elevate their capacity for life. And we're getting some of those tips today from our guest, Ryan Alford, digital marketing expert, the host of the Rad Cast, top 25 business podcast in the world, and dare I say, a good friend of mine. Ryan, thanks for being on the show, man. It's about time, huh?
Hey, it is about time, man. I've been waiting for the invite, dude.
I just had to warm it up a little bit.
I know. Ted, it's good to talk to you, man. Appreciate you inviting me on the show, and excited to bring some value and talk all things modern men.
Yeah, definitely, man. And you're one of the men I look up to. Met you back when I was living in Greenville, South Carolina, still just right up the road in Charlotte, North Carolina. But I want to make sure really quick that our audience has a chance to meet you and hear from your words who you are, what you do. And we can kind of jump into a little bit of the subject for today, man.
Yeah, man. I think first and foremost, I'm a dad and a husband, father of 4 boys. 6, 11, 11, and 13. And my wife, Nicole. We live in Greenville. And, I mean, it's important for me to start there because I do really put family first. But it's, I think most of me know me as a marketing guy. Certainly the podcast, we've been blessed with the growth there. But been in the ad agency business for 20 plus years. I aged myself a little bit. I got a hat on, and I think I have my wrinkle cream on today, so maybe it hides some of it. But I been in the business a long time. I'm one of those that was blessed early on to kind of know what I was good at. Started in marketing at an ad agency right out of school at Clemson. Go Tigers! And spent 17 years really working for other agencies, climbed really fast in the industry. I think I'm a jack of all trades, master of some, I won't say none. And, I climbed quickly and moved to New York in 2008, worked on some of the largest brands in the world: Verizon, Apple, Motorola, Lexus, Google, so the who's of brands, some of the most recognizable ad campaigns of the last 25 years. And, cut my teeth learning and kind of just helping mold, some of the dynamics of a lot of those campaigns, and working with a lot of talented people and absorbing while, having my career grow and opportunities grow, and worked for other people for 17 years for the most part. And then did the entrepreneurial journey, started Radical. We're a full service global boutique agency here in Greenville. We work with nationwide and worldwide brands on digital marketing and really full scale marketing. I hate even putting the digital moniker on anymore. It's sort of a necessary evil, so people kind of wrap their head, but it kind of everything in a way has become digital in a lot of ways. But and started the podcast when I started Radical 5 years ago. And we host entrepreneurs, business leaders, celebrities, athletes to talk about their business journeys on the Rad Cast. And so we've had kind of a dual trajectory of the agency, and the podcast, and even my personal brand as I've gotten out there. So I think all that to summarize is marketing, dude.
Listen, man, the growth has been great to watch and see it from start to finish. I mean, the past 5 years, I remember when you guys first landed in that building that you're in right now and where we're recording, where the Rad Cast studio is and Radical. So seeing the growth firsthand has been amazing. I love something that you said early on was know what I was good at. Right. And I think for a lot of guys listening, I mean, I've said it over and over on the podcast, as men, we need to have a craft, right? I found confidence when I found dominance in something, when I found competence in something. My confidence came after competence because I knew I was good at something. And as long as I was good at that one thing, I was able to have confidence in other realms. So how was that process in learning what you were good at, falling on your face, taking those failures, working your way up, knocking through the punches, and then kind of when you settled into this is it, what was that like and what was the movement afterwards?
It's a really great question. And I don't know that I've ever been asked it in that way. And I'm going to go back and bring it forward. And it will be a quick kind of summary of that. But it's we all have like natural innate things like that we're good at or that we're skilled in. It starts early on, maybe in a sport or some form of schooling or some subject, things like that. And for me, one of my skills was knowing what I was good or not good at. Kind of like growing up, I mean, I'm tall, I'm right at 6'5", big kid. I was not a wonderful baseball player, but I was a great basketball player. I quit baseball really quickly. I quit other sports that I sucked at really quickly. But I stuck with and got into basketball because I'm like, okay, we like what we're good at. I was at least self-reflective enough, even as a kid, to go, okay, I can dominate and be good in this sport. My parents supported me, but didn't push me. And I, was good in basketball, played my whole, up through high school. I was all region, had D2 offers, blew up my ankle. Things didn't happen, but you could call me a college athlete because I would have been. I think I was on that level, but didn't ultimately end up playing. Got recruited by Rick Barnes at Clemson and others, like a lot of big time stuff, but I knew what I was good at. The same thing kind of happened to me in college with recognizing that I had a skill in my marketing classes and even growing up, I had an entrepreneurial and marketing spirit. And I was reflective enough, okay, I'm good at this. And so going into, I wasn't one of those that had 4 majors. I switched in and out of. I was marketing from day one at Clemson, graduated to marketing, and then went to work for an ad agency. And so it was really important. And I'm blessed, but I do think it was a skill set that I had innately in recognizing things that I was good at and then focusing on them. And because I do think that we, as humans, and certainly as men, we like and do more of the things that we're good at, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to find those things that we're good at that can drive success and outcomes. Basketball for me drove in high school. It was, being somewhat of a popular athlete while also, getting the recognition and something that might actually pay my way through school. Yeah. And I recognize that. And then in marketing, recognizing this is a career path, this can be, fruitful and beneficial down the road, and then going into that and sticking with it. But you know what? I wasn't great day one at the ad agency. I joked on a podcast I was on a few months ago. I was like, I was not the world's greatest junior account executive, but I was very good at marketing and understanding and watching how the agency made money. So I may have been the least detailed junior account executive, but I was the most aware of how to help the agency make more money. So it helped me rise quickly.
Yeah. That's something that the agency was very thankful for. They're like, all right, this guy gets it.
Exactly. Yeah, because there were junior AEs that I got promoted over, and that, we're like, wait a second, what? I'm a better account guy or girl than this guy. Well, no, you weren't, because you didn't have the client relationships that I did, and you didn't see how the agency made money and generate more of those opportunities.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the biggest thing is it's really important to recognize what we're good at and to hone those skills.
Mm-hmm. And that's the caveat, though, that you added, though, was not only were you good at that, but it was something you could be successful and fruitful with. Listen, man, when I was in high school, I could have been great at Halo, but there weren't 16-year-olds winning $3 million purses or Fortnite at the time.
Yeah.
So there's also the reality to what you're good at, but also what is the world ready for? What is the technology leaning towards? And what can you capitalize with that skill? Because there's some folks that might be like, oh, I'm great at video games. Now you can make a living for that. Back in the day, I necessarily couldn't. Speaking of making a living, congratulations on the growth and success of both Radical and the Rad Cast. It's amazing for both of those trajectories to go up. But being a husband, father of 4, and 2 growing companies, because let's be honest, a podcast in itself is a company.
Yeah.
Man, managing all that, right? You hear the term work-life balance. We actually had a guest on our podcast not too long ago talking about like there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's like soul-life balance. You either feed your soul or you're living life. There's no separation from work and life. Like it's just one life. So how do you handle that? And I put in air quotations for those that are listening and not watching us on YouTube, that work-life balance and still get everything done.
Yeah. I think I have an interesting philosophy on this. Number one, like my own starts with my own desires and what I want to do. And I'm going to give a story. So I've been divorced. And in my first marriage, I had very little work-life balance. I was very unhappy. I married someone that I thought was right, but wasn't. We didn't have a lot of the same principles, values, goals, long-term. And I was very unhappy and I made a lot of mistakes and I didn't have work-life balance because I really didn't want to be at home. And I was honest. I was not honest with myself. I didn't even recognize that at the time because I think as men, we do what we want to do. If you want to have a successful business and company and grow in your company and you're happy at home and you want to grow your marriage and have a happy life and you want to be with your kids, you can do both. And I call BS on people that kind of create that wall or say that, well, I can't do both, No, you can. We choose to do what we want to do. And if you want to be honest with yourself, it doesn't mean, don't get me wrong. If your goal is to have a 1% company, an Elon Musk like trajectory, don't get me wrong. There can be suffering between the work-life balance, but you can have a very successful career, 6 figures, good career and have work-life balance. And so for me, I was always going to be successful. But once I found happiness in my marriage and my life, that's when the work-life balance became very obvious. And I always set the boundaries at work with employees, with clients to a degree. That expectation was, this is when I'm available. We can get everything done. We can take care of the fire drills and do things, but this is my time and this is my time. And those things, there's non-negotiable. And, it doesn't mean it's always perfect. And I'm far from the perfect husband or dad. But I've always set those boundaries because I wanted to, especially when I got happy in my second marriage and was with the right person and, making better decisions.
Yeah. What I found that comes with that, because it's actually something I've seen you do and I've admired from afar, was your ability to kind of mesh the two when it comes to that work-life balance in order to operate, get things done, but also have that fruitful family time, go into the games for your sons and all that. But I've acknowledged that probably takes a lot of boundaries. And that's something a lot of guys sometimes have a problem with if they're people pleasers, Mr. Nice Guys, and they don't know how to set boundaries or things like that. And it was an interesting conversation I had with my wife one day, because I practice time blocking, right? And I'm very defensive with that. And she said to me one day, you're very defensive of your time. I feel like I have to fit in within your schedule. And I remember telling her, I said, you should ask other people what they think about my time. Because most people who are trying to maybe combat what your schedule is or fit in other areas, they're going to get the defensiveness, or they're going to get your boundaries that you set up is I'm not available. So I remember explaining to my wife that she gets the defensiveness from my from my work time, while my work gets the defensiveness from my family time. How have you found those boundaries set up for you, and how people around you respect those boundaries? Or if someone's not respecting the boundaries, how do you navigate that? Because I'm sure some guys probably are still trying to hone in on some of the people around them that just won't respect how they've set their schedule.
Yeah. I mean, look, I want to acknowledge something before I answer that. Like, I worked for other people for 17 years. 17 years. I have not always owned my own company and got to really make my own schedule, and I still look, I've got clients, like, even owning the company, we all answer to someone, but I do recognize that my life today is able to be dictated somewhat when you choose to be an entrepreneur. I can choose to work 5 more hours this afternoon and night, or I can go coach my son's baseball game, and I can reap those rewards and also reap those limitations from business, because I can make that choice as an entrepreneur. And so I want to recognize that before answering this. With that said, you set boundaries for me. Like, I live my life in a lot of ways through social media and my personal brand. And I'm going to give an exact business example of what you're asking. So I post heavily on social media at Ryan Alford on all the platforms. And you see the thread of family in my postings, my stories, pictures of my family, what I'm doing, how they are. And at least every other person that either comes to work with me individually, like coaching and consulting one-to-one, or even clients on the larger level for Radical, about one of two, about 50% notate they wanted to work with me because they see that I'm a family guy. And that's what personal branding does for you, is I set the table before we even go to sit at it. What does that mean? People get to know me, my standards, my expectations, my kind of way of living life, doing work. Certainly my expertise gets shown through that. But that's one of the blessings of living my life. And look, I don't show everything. I joke with my wife all the time. I'm the most social, unsocial guy in the world. Like, you see, because we don't show everything. And it's not because we're showing just the good. I mean, I post about, trials and tribulations. I go on podcasts. I'm as transparent about divorce, about hurt, and anything that you ask me, I'll be honest about. But you do get that. I put that out there, and thus it sort of attracts the people that understand that. And it's funny because, and I think the world's changed a little bit where people understand that dynamic, and maybe COVID's all that there's some work-life balances going on. But I set that table early and often, and I don't have to battle those things very often.
Yeah, that's something I mentioned before in terms of training others how to treat you. I can't remember the last time my phone rang past 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Like,
no, mine doesn't either.
I can't remember.
Spam calls occasionally.
Exactly.
Potential spam. He calls me every time. And I tell him, until you're definitely, I am not answering.
Exactly. but you train other people how to treat you, because my phone doesn't ring after a certain time. And if ever I get a text message from somebody that knows me after that time, it usually starts with "sorry to bother you." Right. And it's because, like you said, setting the table before you even sit down and serve that meal. It's almost as if some people already understand, okay, I know what this person's going to tolerate or not going to tolerate before I even get started. And which is great, is something you said before in our pre-interview about the non-negotiables. Right. And I kind of want to touch on that a little bit, because I feel like a lot of guys don't have non-negotiables. And this is actually something I think is actually important, which for me, early on in the relationship with my wife, I had a number of non-negotiables, one of which was, she was like, how long are you going to keep being this entrepreneurial, ambitious person chasing the 1%? And I was like, let me tell you right now, this is kind of ingrained in me. It's in my blood. Like, I could be sitting on $1 million, kind of like what Meek Mill says. I'm the type to count $1 million cash and grind like I'm broke. So you're on this train or you're not. Yeah. What were some of those non-negotiables that you had, and how is that crafted I guess when you met Nicole, you guys start dating and you're starting to talk about what a life looks like in the future, how that fits with some of the non-negotiables that you've set up.
Yeah. I think, again, practice makes perfect. We both had been married and were divorced, and, brought, boys, I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. She had a 2-year-old. We brought them together. And what I mean by that is, we both learned a lot about what we didn't want. And in our first marriage, and I'm not in any way recommending people have to have a starter marriage to get, I recommend getting it right the first time. But it does start with setting those expectations and having those hard discussions. And Nicole and I knew a lot about what we didn't want. So it was somewhat a lot transparent getting to know each other, that we did or didn't have some of those qualities. And, my non-negotiables, and I'll just say overall, and certainly not necessarily with Nicole, maybe not at all, but like, and if I took one of those personality tests, like it shows you like what they are. One of my biggest ones is freedom. And I make my time, like, and I will say this, even when I worked for other people, I've always had an ability and set the expectation that I make my time, that you tell me what you want done and I will get it done within that time frame. But I will do it how I want to do it, when I want to do it. And it'll be great. But I just don't take, it's not that I don't look, I worked for 17 years for other people. This isn't about Ryan Alford not being unable to work for others. I was very successful working for others, made a lot of money working for others, for them and me. But I always did it on my time and my way of doing it within the confines of what was there. Certainly that's become more easy being an entrepreneur. But again, to setting the table, I've always been someone that I have to do things the way, in the manner with which is successful for me, which will be successful for you. And when you start to build, like when I worked for others, I built that credibility from, okay, Ryan's not the best junior account executive. He's not great on these details, but damn, he's building some relationships or making us a lot of money. And then gradually I got better at those details and other things that some people were, but the big picture. So I built credibility and earned trust. And the same thing now, owning my own company, I don't have to have those discussions, but the experience in providing real world examples and the successes I've had carry the weight that I don't have to explain that anymore. But freedom and doing and being me has always been non-negotiable. And for Nicole, I've learned to be a better husband, and, far from perfect. I fell on my face just this week as a husband, and, like, he's got to eat it, and know that you could do better. But there are clear things that I think people that deal with me know are my boundaries that just don't get crossed.
Yeah. Honestly, I've found that where I haven't drawn a line in the sand for a very long time, because I think like there's just an air about you where people will understand, like, all right, this is the limit. Like, we're not going to go any farther here.
Yeah. And I think, I don't have people, I know that I'm a confident person. I know that people that don't know me considered arrogant, and the people that get to know me know that that's not me. But I'm confident because I'm driven and I have success, and it's not always been perfect, but credibility created through real success allows you to set the boundaries that you need to.
Something I wrote down when you said build credibility and earn trust, which sounds a lot like building a brand, by the way. But it is. Come on now. I had to nod at that. But building credibility and earn trust, kind of leaning more into that brand example. I'm not going to call the CEO of Apple and be like, man, y'all should start doing this. No, I'm going to buy the iPhone and expect the iPhone to operate like an iPhone, because it's built its brand, its credibility, and its trust. And because of that, it can operate the way that it wants to, because I trust it to operate that way. I
Yeah.
think a lot of us are building that credibility and trust in our everyday lives, where I've said, whether you're an hourly employee, a salary employee, or a commissioned employee, I'm under the belief that you get paid for the work that you do, not the time that you work. So I might be a salaried employee, but I could talk to my employer and say, okay, what is your goal? And you're hiring me to do what? I can provide that for you. I can help us attain the goal. Now, my means of doing that is my brand. The way I do it is unorthodox. There's a lot of people in my industry when it comes to meteorology. We all do it different. We have different styles. We'll have different forecasts. Doesn't mean one's right or the other, but we get the job done. And it's about being paid for the job, not necessarily paid for the time, which is huge, because you first have to build that credibility and earn that trust. Speaking of, do you want to react to that?
No, that's perfect. Nah, I think that's good.
Nice. I was going to segue into, with credibility and trust, man, raising 4 boys, brother. Yeesh. I'm gonna say an extra prayer for you tonight, man. How's it going?
It's good, man. I'm glad. I mean, that was actually where my mind was going as you were talking. Like, it's great, man. I mean, it's funny. Like, some of the things, the topics that we're talking about, we have 4 really great kids, and they're all like straight A students. And, I think a lot about the nature versus nurture discussion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because my wife and I are certainly, we don't just let anything go. And so we certainly coach and mentor our kids. But you know what? Nicole and I provide examples and a standard. And it's almost back to the exact thing we were just talking about, setting expectations. The Alford household, the expectations are, you're going to be a good person. You're going to be open to diversity, diverse situations, diverse people, experiencing things. You're going to respect things. You're expected to give your best. And I've never had to say those exact words to my kids, but they know it because Nicole and I live and breathe it, and they see the example. And look, they're not perfect, and we're not perfect. But I do relate that we have some really well-behaved, good kids, good in school, because they know the standard and the expectation, and the table is set because they watch it every day and they see what their parents are doing. And it doesn't make them perfect, but we do get comments all the time. Why are your kids so well behaved? Why aren't they doing this? Because they know what they're supposed to do, because we tell them when we need to, but more than not, they can look me in the eyes and know what I'm thinking before I even say it, because they know what the standard is.
Yeah. I think it's Kobe who said once in an interview, he's like, you can't just do this, and I'm doing the talking hands. You can't just talk. You have to act, and that example is what your kids will end up following. What kind of men do you hope your boys to grow up to be?
I want them to be themselves first and foremost. It's funny, like, before you have kids and like you have this thing, like, I grew up playing sports and was, good in basketball. And my wife, Nicole, was a college athlete in basketball. And so, we have the blended family, but there's always this expectation that, okay, they're just going to play sports, do this. And they play sports and they love it. And we encourage it because it's good activity, but we don't force it. And we're not, like, counting the days till, they're going to get a college, scholarship offer. But we guide and lead them towards things that we think are good for them. But a lot of them, they choose it on their own. But my biggest thing is I want them to be themselves and to embrace what they're good at, and and to find that. And so when we see that they're good in something, we encourage more of it. And quite frankly, when we see that they're not great at things, we just let that ship sail. Mm-hmm. I mean, a couple of, I'm not going to start naming my kids, but some are better, more athletic than others. They're all playing sports, but some of it's clear, that there might be a future in this or not. But we encourage them to kind of be themselves, try different things, put them around different things, experience different things. And so, my hope for them is just to not be influenced too much by the world and more influenced by their own potential.
Yeah.
I don't want influence of the world to get in the way of their potential.
Yeah. I mean, influence is huge, man. And where we garner that influence. My wife and I were just talking about, when we welcome kids into the world, what's going to have more of an influence on them, us or their friends. And I was like, you best believe it's their friends because
Yeah.
they're going to get to that age where they don't want to listen to mom and dad at some point. So we could only hope that they have, the wherewithal to kind of critical think on their own, not just get influenced by the world and everything they see. And really quick, as we're coming up to the last few minutes of the podcast, there's a lot of talk around, how we show up as men in the world in our everyday lives. And, there's that term, which I've said on the podcast, I'm not a fan of, the quote unquote toxic masculinity. Like, I don't know come on now, but it's, but how do you think, and I'm not going to say just men in general, how they should show up, but how do you try and show up in the world? Right. And I try and show up with integrity, character, taking care of others, but owning who I am and owning my space and not apologizing for it. But what kind of presence do you try to have in the world as a man?
Yeah, man, it's a weird time that we live in. I don't know when it became bad to have roles, like clearly defined roles in the household. And look, my wife and I both work full-time jobs. Like, we both provide for our household. So this isn't about like, Debbie housekeeper and, Richard insurance salesman and, bringing home the bacon and, doing the dishes or doing the laundry. I mean, it's about shared responsibilities. But at the same time, I think a man has a role in establishing the culture of the house and on some level. And a lot of that starts with, what's acceptable, what's not. And also providing an example, not because you're perfect and because but here's the thing, like, like I think that whatever's happening in the world, it's best that you do what you feel like is the right thing to do. And, we all get influenced by certain things, but I'm just not going to let the world dictate what I think my role is within my household and, or, my role as a man. I live my life through social media in a lot of ways. And I think what I try to give off is, yes, integrity, which is important, but a sense of leadership and not backing away from my own opinions and or feeling like I'm too led by any one position. And I think we kind of hide behind these political sides now and different things like that, when I like to just be guided what I feel like is right and wrong, and having a moral compass. And I think if people that do work with me, that they know that there's a moral compass that leads what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Having that code, having that really that honor, that respect, that loyalty, that goes far, that goes miles.
Do unto others as you have them do unto you. Yeah. I mean, and I live my life that way in a lot of ways. Like, it guides the golden rule, like literally goes through my mind a lot. Cause I think it's like, okay, when I'm doing something, I'm talking to someone, like, just think about that, like in anything that you do.
Yeah.
And I try to think about it through that lens. And then when it's so funny, when I haven't lived up to that standard, I feel it and kind of know it. And I want to make it right. Like, I would hate if someone had done that or said that, or did, I'm like, yeah, that's not cool. And so
there's few people that I've given the credit to check me on where I stand in terms of my standard. And, my wife being one of them. When you mention roles, when it comes down to it, I talk to who do you need, right? What do you need? Because we're building our household, like you mentioned. So I'm more concerned about what my wife needs in this situation as opposed to what the world thinks I should show up as. Yep. Because as long as me and my household are good, we can take care of our community, those that we love, those around us, we're doing okay and we're being a positive force in the world. That's what I'm focused on right now, because I can't solve the world's problems. There's too much to consider. But if I can take care of this household, take care of the people I love, and they can take care of me, and we communicate and show up how we need each other to show up, I think that sounds like progress at the very least for me. So,
I mean, I 100% agree. You said something there I want to touch on just really quick.
yeah.
I don't know when it became necessary for us to have an opinion and a solution to every single thing. Like, everybody thinks they have to react to everything. And you know what? I'm not smart enough to solve every problem or have an opinion on I don't want to think about every news headline and everything that happens and feel like I have to share some opinion or no one is smart enough to do all things and have all opinions and solve all. It's just not. That's why we have specialists and things and all that. And you're not required to voice your opinion on every single thing. And so that's one of the things that I think is the most toxic right now, is that everyone feels like they have to respond to that, or that there's pressure to do this. And well, if you didn't take a stand on whatever, that means you accept it. No, I'm just not smart enough to know all sides of it. And I got to focus on what I'm focused on. Yeah. Family, culture, my businesses, my friends, so my kids, and it crosses into a lot of those. Well, if this happened, then, it could impact. Yeah, it could have, but I can't solve every problem. Yeah. And I think that's a trap we sort of fall into now that can be really dangerous, especially as men, because we're problem solvers, right? And so focus on your problems and, first and foremost.
Yeah. I think it was Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules of Life. He's like, get your house in order before worrying about all the world's problems. Because like you mentioned, quite frankly, I don't have enough time to read up and research all these different things, because at the end of the day, after all that research and learning about it and talking about it, I'm not the lawmaker. I'm not the decision maker. I'm not the one that actually enacts any of these changes. And there's way too much red tape to get through to really get there. So again, to your point is, identifying the things that are impacting your circle and what you can have influence over, what you care about, what you see in your world. And then you focus on that. You can't die on all the hills, but you can pick your hill. Coming to the end here, I want to make sure first, before I ask my last question, that everybody listening can follow you, could get more of the Rad Cast, can follow some of the amazing work you're doing, and of course see some pictures of you, the family, Nicole, the kids, and everything. So Ryan, how can folks get more of you and all the amazing work and content that you're putting out?
Yeah, I mean, I am super out there and easy to find. I think I mentioned earlier, I'm at Ryan Alford, ALFORD, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'm verified on all the platforms, so I usually pop up pretty quick if you start typing my name. Nice. And then, so you can, and all my links are there, ryanalford.com as well. And, yeah, man, reach out. I get a lot of DMs, but I answer just about all of them, especially that are legit, and people trying to really engage. If you're trying to, immediately sell me crypto or Forex, I probably ignore it, but, but yeah, man, love to, connect with anyone that listens that, connects with any of this message.
Definitely. I'll have that link in the show notes and everything, man. And last question as we wrap up, because I definitely want to make sure I'm respectful of your time, is what's something that you've seen or something that's happened to you in your life that shapes the way you view the world as a man?
I think watching my parents. I grew up in I stopped short of saying the middle class, the lower middle class, easily South Carolina, track home. And I watched my parents work multiple jobs to support my sister and I. They lived the American dream. My dad was in the military, never graduated college. I was the third offer to graduate college, but my parents really influenced me, watching them work multiple jobs, have 3 to 4 side hustles, doing trade shows for something that, they made $200 on, 3 weekends. And I'm like, at the time I thought they were crazy, but they gave us a better life. They gave my sister and I every opportunity in the world. And, people ask who my heroes are. I mean, they're my parents, and, I wouldn't be here without them.
Yeah. Hey, and that's what you mentioned, that example, right? That seriously has left a lasting impact and an influence, and continues to kind of that heartbeat ripples through in your household today. So Ryan, man, I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Thank you for chatting with us. And again, I found the undertones of the marketing in there with the building credibility and earning trust. So hopefully folks can take that advice, not just for their personal brand, but for any companies that they have as well. So thank you, brother.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you, Ted. You're a great friend and can't wait to grow together.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. I'm going to recap really quick some of the things that you left along the way in case someone's working out, driving, or maybe cleaning the house while listening. What I was good at, recognize if you're listening that you have some innate talent, gifts that could probably be very beneficial to the world. It's your job to identify what those talents and gifts are and then offer it to the world after you hone in on that craft, kind of fine tune it a little bit, get better at it. You're not going to be great once you start, but you need to start to be great. Also, competence even equals competence. If you're working on trying to find out what you're good at, or you don't have that confidence yet, double down on those strengths. And then when it comes to building relationships with others, especially a long-term relationship like a marriage, focusing on those principles, values, goals, long-term plans, and also making sure you know what you don't want as much as you know what you do want. You can do both when it comes to building the business and paying attention to family. Not necessarily talking about work-life balance, but you can do both as men. If we want to do something, we typically tend to jump in head first. So if you're trying to figure out why A isn't working, but B is taking off, maybe look at how you feel around A. Look at maybe what's going on, some of the intangibles that might have you maybe neglecting some of the answers that's right in front of you. Build credibility, earn trust. It's true in business. It's true in life. Make sure that you're earning that credibility, you're earning that trust, and you're showing up consistently into who you say you're going to be for others, because that is how you provide an example in your household. It's also how you provide examples in others, how they treat you. And also for those that are parents that have little ones, they're watching you constantly. They're going to do what you do, not what you say. So make sure that you have that positive influence on them, because when those kids grow up, they'll get influences from the world. And then show up. Each and every single day, as I always say on this podcast, men, show up, because you are needed, you are important, and you show up as your best selves. Thank you for making it to the end. As always, Ryan, we appreciate you. And of course, if you got value from this, make sure you like, subscribe to the podcast, share it with a friend that got value from it, that you know can get value from it, and leave us a rating to let us know how we're doing, because that's the only way we get better. Appreciate you guys. And as we always say at the end of the episode, everybody wants the sunshine, but they don't want the rain. But you can't get the pleasure without first the pain. Let's grow.
Let's impact some men today. I think we're going to do a great job.